Hello and welcome to Lore of the Cards, the series that looks to uncover the lore hidden in your Hearthstone deck. Well, after a rather lengthy Fandral video, it's time we had a look at the lore behind some cards you may have thought didn't have too much lore behind them. This episode, we'll be looking at a card continually mocked for its utter uselessness in competitive play, the Magma Rager. As well as our hot-headed friend, we'll be looking at the other Ragers too. Ice, Amgam, and Shadow. Not the core Rager, because we already looked at the game's legendary core hound the Beast some time ago. The art for the Magma and Amgam Ragers are by Matt Gasser, an artist currently residing in Northern California. He began his career in the video games industry, working on games such as Eragon, Forgotten Realms Demon's Stone, and The Lord of the Rings The Two Towers. He later moved on to animation with Star Wars Clone Wars. Since going freelance, he's created art for the Warcraft TCG, the feature film Hop, and most recently, the Angry Birds movie. Anton Zemskov did the Ice Rager, but we only talked about him last episode. God, stop being so prolific, jeez. John Neimeister created the Shadow Ragers art. Another artist from the United States, he currently works as a 2D character artist for Hi-Res Studios, and has produced a few other images for Hearthstone too. The Ragers each represent what Warcraft Chronicle refers to as cosmic forces, mostly elemental. There are 6 forces at play when referring to elements within the Warcraft universe. The elements form the foundation for all matter within the universe, and shamans spend their lives seeking to understand these building blocks, either to live in harmony with them or assert their dominance upon them. Shamanistic cultures have discovered that the elements can influence their emotional state. As a result, mortal races have come to associate the elements with different feelings, both positive and negative. The Magma Rager's element is fire, linked positively to passion and negatively to fury. I'd even argue this positive and negative is expressed in the card's stats, as its passion empowers its attack value, while its reckless fury leaves it open to attack, exposing weakness. The Amgam Rager represents Earth, which I'll justify later, connected positively to stability and negatively to stubbornness. Again, I'd argue these traits are well represented in stats. Amgam's stability makes it far more hardy than Magma, but its stubbornness prevents it from going effectively on the attack. Water is the element represented by the Ice Rager, its positive trait, tranquility, and negative, indecisiveness, which are a little too abstract to express through stats alone. There is also the element of air, but as of yet there is no Rager that reflects the element of cunning and madness. The other 2 primordial forces connected to the elements are spirit and decay. Spirit is sometimes referred to by shaman as the 5th element, and by monks as chi. It also has a positive and negative trait, bravery and naivete. It is the life-giving force that interconnects everything in existence, and shaman that seek balance with the elements rely on it to achieve their goal. Spirit is the energy that is found in all living things, a constant that connects them all, even connecting mortals to elementals. The final elemental force of decay is synonymous with efficiency and ruthlessness. This force is exploited by shaman that wish to subjugate and weaponize the elements. Shaman that utilize decay are referred to as dark shaman, for they do not wish to work with the planet's elements, instead dominate with an iron fist. When the universe was born, some of the first sentient creatures to form upon the nascent world scattered through the great dark beyond were the elemental spirits. These beings were formed in a near endless variety of shapes and sizes, each with their own individual personality, but a personality heavily influenced by the element that makes up their body. The world of Azeroth was, in some ways, no different from millions of other forming worlds, as, like them, its first sentient beings were the elemental spirits. But there was something special that lay within Azeroth, which affected the genesis of the elementals. On most worlds, the element of spirit balanced the other elements, creating a harmonious relation between them. Worlds with an abundance of spirit would cause the other elementals to become passive and docile. As time passed on Azeroth, the opposite happened. The spirits became hostile and war broke out between them. This was due to the world soul that lay at Azeroth's core, striding the near endless blackness of the great dark beyond were the Titans. They wandered the universe, ordering worlds in hopes of finding more of their kind. They were born from worlds, but they did not form from just any planet. A world soul had to lie within. To give you an idea of how rare this is, of the millions of planets in the great dark beyond, only 7 known Titans have come into existence. The first was Aman'Thul, and his questing saw Eonar, Norgannon, Khaz'goroth, Golganeth, Agramar and Sargeras join his pantheon. This makes Azeroth very special indeed. Many ages ago, Azeroth's burgeoning world soul was so vast it needed to consume the element of spirit to sustain it. With spirit being drained in this way, the balance of the planet shifted, and the planet's elementals grew violent. Fire, earth, air and water split into 4 different armies, each led by a powerful elemental lord. Ragnaros the Fire Lord, Therazane the Stone Mother, Alakir the Wind Lord, and Neptulon the Tide Hunter. They plunged the surface of Azeroth into chaos, reveling in the unending strife, the planet in constant elemental flux. The lords dominated the lesser elemental spirits, pitting them against each other with tactics that fitted their elemental inclinations. Ragnaros was brash and violent, Alakir cunning and deceptive, Therazane heavily defensive, while Neptulon patiently employed divide and conquer schemes. The elementals' reign over Azeroth would come to an end with the arrival of the Old Gods, who enslaved the elemental lords for their own dark purpose of corrupting the world soul. Elementals are now a rarer sight upon Azeroth, since the Titans' army, the Titanforge, defeated them before imprisoning their old god masters. The elements are bound to their respective planets, so to destroy them would be near pointless, as their corporeal forms would merely manifest again. This is why Ra and Helya created the elemental plane, preventing them from raging across the planet. The Magma Rager is the only one of the Ragers that exists within World of Warcraft. It can be found at the Colossal Forge in Ulduar, a Titanforge city containing the prison of the old god Yogg-Saron below. Its appearance is entirely different to that shown on its Hearthstone card, bar the obvious fact that it's made up completely of fire. The Magma Rager found in WoW is a different type of fire elemental than the Ragers in Hearthstone, a Revenant. The Revenants first appeared in Warcraft 3 as undead elemental creatures able to resist the control of the Lich King, whose undead scourge swept over Azeroth during this time. They consisted of giant suits of armour clutching a giant mace and kite shield, their forms held together by the power of their associated element. A large Frost Revenant called the Guardian took it upon itself to guard Frostmourne. The sword connected to the Lich King, which he cast from his frozen throne in order to bind a champion to his will. Arthas Menethil, the Prince of Lordaeron, sought Frostmourne during his quest to avenge his people, countless numbers of which were slaughtered by the Scourge, who he believed to be led by the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis.
Turn back, mortals. Death and darkness are all that await you in this forsaken vault.
I doubt there's anything down here more terrifying than what we've faced already.
Believe what you will, boy. You shall not pass. Turn away before it's too late.
Still trying to protect the sword, are you?
No. Trying to protect you from it.
Arthas was able to defeat Mal'Ganis, but as the Revenant had hinted, his soul was claimed by Frostmourne. It is thought that the Revenants were the elemental foot soldiers of the Old Gods during their war with the Titanforged, and along with all other elementals were banished to the elemental plane. Not pleased with their being locked away, the Revenants' hatred for the Titanforged and their creators only grew within their respective areas of the elemental plane. Eventually, arrogant and reckless mortal wizards began to summon elementals back to Azeroth. When a Revenant was freed, they seized their opportunity for freedom, striking down those that had summoned them. Free, they would seek out others of their elemental type, and look to sow elemental destruction upon Azeroth. In their initial design, Revenants were quite humanoid in appearance, but changed over time, making them look more akin to other elementals. What has remained consistent is their weaponry, a one-handed weapon coupled with a large shield. They also retain their armour, but it looks far less refined when compared to the Revenant's initial design, losing the flowing cloth and looking more as if it was hastily cobbled together. So what type of elemental are the Ragers? Seemingly they're rather standard, though these designs were introduced during WoW's Cataclysm expansion for visual variety. Knowing that the elements would play a key role in Deathwing's chaotic return, the design team didn't want players becoming bored with the same old elementals they had seen in WoW since the vanilla days. While they did return, many new elemental creatures were introduced, not only making the game look better, but increasing the variety of soldiers the elemental lords had at their command for player heroes to fight. While they are just standard elementals, there is something distinct about the Magma and Ice Rager's design. The metal ribcage that encases their forms. Very few elementals remained on Azeroth's surface after their mass imprisonment, but mortals have found several different ways of summoning elementals to aid them. Shaman do this through respecting the elements, requesting their aid, and the elementals lend help where they see fit. Mages summon water elementals, temporary but loyal comrades. The ribcages are creations of the Twilight's hammer, mortals loyal to the old gods and their servants like Deathwing, who wish to bring about the hour of twilight for the inhabitants of Azeroth. The ribcages are crafted from elementium, an extremely hard metal native to the elemental plane. It has been used to craft Deathwing's armour and the Firelord's mace, Sulfuras. Even harder than dragon scale, the metal is capable of withstanding incredibly hot temperatures without melting. The hammer would summon elemental spirits and bind them within their constructs. When bound, the elementals had no free will. The hammer would use their enchanted creations to enforce their will upon the spirits. Bound elementals were frequently used by the hammer as foot soldiers during many of their operations. Though the elementals were bound, slaves to the insidious hammer, they could become unbound. The Shaman Unbound Elemental card actually depicts a bound elemental, still trapped within its elementium cage. The restrictive devices could be removed from the elementals, and when they were, the spirits would very quickly seek out vengeance upon the Twilight's hammer who imprisoned them. Elementals are proud beings, and being enslaved enrages them to deadly anger. So, now we know the basics of Azeroth's elementals and what the cage is that encircles the Magma and Ice Rager. But what of the other two Ragers, Amgam and Shadow? Amgam was added to the game with the Whispers of the Old Gods expansion. Mainly it seems as a bit of a joke specific to Hearthstone. In trading card games, it's possible to see newer cards end up stronger than older cards of the same value as more are added to the game. This is called power creep. For example, Pompous Thespian is a power-crept Frostwolf Grunt, as it has an extra attack point for the exact same mana cost. Hearthstone has been relatively careful with ensuring that power-crept cards tend to be replacements of weaker ones that don't see play. Amgam is a power-crept version of the Magma Rager, as it has higher health for its cost, which means it survives on the board. Magma Rager can easily be dispatched and rarely even gets to attack. If you haven't noticed already, Amgam is Magma written backwards, and the card's description in the game states power creep. written backwards. The Old Gods expansion was themed around familiar cards twisted and corrupted to create new cards. Amgam would appear to be a recently extinguished Magma Rager. Its form is relatively similar, large spikes protruding from its shoulders, and its golden animation shows thick smoke billowing off its body, as if the Magma Rager's fire had just been put out. It now looks more like a charred earth elemental than a fire one. Amgam Ragers don't exist within Warcraft lore, so it's most likely just a little fun had by the Hearthstone team. The Shadow Rager is the only one of the Ragers that does not represent an elemental force. It represents the cosmic force of the Shadow, also known as the Void, one of the two fundamental forces for all existence, along with the Light. Opposites, light and dark, good and evil, but one force cannot exist without the other. Light was there in the beginning before the universe even took shape, and the shadow soon followed. As the light spread across all existence, the brilliant glow began to thin in certain areas, and within these gaps, the void formed, a dark force that sought to devour all energy. When the light and void clashed, the following catastrophic explosion was the catalyst for the forming of the entire Warcraft universe as we know it. Based on appearance, the Shadow Rager looks a lot like a shade, restless spirits often found around gatherings of undead. During their invasion, living members of the Scourge would often sacrifice themselves to become shades, the perfect spies, invisible to the naked eye and able to wordlessly communicate with one another. There are a few things about the Shadow Rager that make me reticent to label it a shade. Firstly, its title. Shades are ghosts rather than beings of shadow energy, such as a Void Lord. The Shadow Rager could be a Void Wraith, spindly shadow beings. Parts of the Rager's appearance are not seen in either Shades or Void Wraiths. Its lower half does not end in a point like a Void Wraith's, or dissipate into smoke like a Shade's. Its form does begin to disperse at the bottom, but the Rager has a collection of tentacles, suggesting it's a being unlike the average Shade or Void Walker. Finally, its eyes. The Shadow Rager is the only class-specific Rager in Hearthstone, belonging to the Rogue. In Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, Rogues align with the Jade Lotus, the criminal organisation led by Aya Blackpaw that makes use of mysteriously enchanted jade statues to fight their battles. In the original art, the Shadow Rager has purple eyes, but when added to the game, the eye colour was changed to green. The Shadow Rager may be an experiment by the Lotus, empowering a Shade or Void Wraith with the enchanted jade that can be seen in the Rager's eyes. But this is all theory crafting and guessing on my end. The Shadow Rager is also a continuation of Blizzard's power creep joke, being the same cost as the Magma Rager, same stats, but with stealth, so clearly better. The card's description reads, "We went there." So, there you have it, a little insight into the Ragers. If you want to find out a little more on the elementals, check out our Neptulon video, and if shades are your thing, there's an episode on the Ancient Shade too. If you've enjoyed the art, I've done my best to credit the artists in the description below. As always, it's really appreciated if you subscribe, like, and share this video around. If you want to find out how Lore of the Cards episodes are coming along and what other things we're up to, follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Until next time, happy Hearthstoning.
Down in the